morning everybody, and welcome back to the Museum of Cornish Life costume store. Today we have some very interesting objects to show you. We have examples of some of our wartime utility clothing. We don't have very many objects to show you, but I just want to explain that the Wartime Utility Scheme was set up by the Board of Trade in 1941 when they brought in rationing for clothing. Materials had to be kept back for the war effort, so they had to restrict the amount of fabrics that could be used in garments for clothing construction. So you were issued with a clothing ration book, and you were initially given 66 coupons with which to buy your clothes for the year. So that included everything: coats, jackets, suits, blouses, underwear, stockings. It didn't children under the age of 4 were exempt from restriction, as was second-hand clothing. So let us have a look at some of the clothing we have here. Our first garment I'm going to show you is a man's coat made of a tweed fabric. Very simple design, not much fabric in the front, just a vent at the back. Simple collar. You weren't allowed to have a double-breasted clothing, and also a lot of men were very upset that they weren't allowed to have turn-ups on their trousers. So this particular garment was made by Weatherall, made by Windjammer, and it has the little CC41 label in it there. You can also see that the amount of fabric was compromised by reducing the lining on the coat. So they were just, for this coat, which isn't a particularly good quality tweed, it was kept very, very basic. And it also has little flat pockets just inset on the side there. And this one has 4 buttons, which I find surprising because a lot of the restrictions were for 3 buttons, but perhaps the compromise with the lining allowed them to do that. No detail, 3 little buttons on the cuff as well, but no turn back, or just a little finishing off detail there. In contrast, this coat here, which was made by Hepworth's from Leeds and London, is fully lined. Our CC41 label has been tucked away in the corner there, under the armpit. It's got lovely piping down the side here, nice little inside pocket. Again, simple design, the same vent pleat at the back, but a much more superior quality fabric, which just gives you an idea of the contrasts that different manufacturers produced. The other object I'm going to show you in the clothing is a man's, a little man's shirt. We don't have the collar, unfortunately, but we do, and you can see the CC41 label in the top there, but it's made of a very, very sturdy cotton. And again, the finishing off has been very well done. We've got a nice front placket with buttons and handmade buttonholes. We've got this nice little detail at the back with the top stitching. And top stitching around the sleeve area. So things were well made because they had to last. It also included shoes. This is a lovely, beautiful pair of Mary Janes, which have got a little label inside which says special joint fitting as well, just inside there, special joint fitting. And the CC41 label is there as well. Very sturdy, obviously being well worn and then rehealed, and very well looked after. Children's shoes also came under the CC41 label. Now, I can remember as a child growing up in the 1950s wearing school sandals like this very much in the summertime, the crepe sole and the top stitching around the edge, and we have those as well. And finally, the only other items that we have here are a pair of deerskin gloves, which, so you can see the CC41 label and also see their price, 6 and 11 pence, which is 6 shillings and say, well, 10p was 2 shillings, so they'd be about 30p, which in today's money. Interesting that we're seeing that they're real deer, so they're using other materials as well. So the rationing scheme went on for 10 years. Clothing was rationed right up until 1951, and as the years went by, the number of coupons you were allowed did reduce to about 44. So you had to be very, very careful with what you could buy. When you think a coat like this would take 16 coupons, and then you had to have all your underwear. So people had to be very careful with how they used their coupons. So at the same time, the government introduced their make, do and mend scheme, whereby you were encouraged to remake things into, cut down clothes, make clothes for children, you were even encouraged to unravel your knitting or old jumpers and re-knit those. Very much, I know we call it recycling now, but it was very, very similar to during the war, where there really was a shortage of materials, not where we have too many now and we're getting anxious about protecting our environment. I wanted to finally show you a picture of a suit that was designed by the designers for the Board of Trade. So it says a beautiful cut pale brown wool check suit was the second of the 34 garments designed by the Board of Trade's utility scheme by the Incorporated Society of London Fashion Designers. So if you can see here, a very elegant suit, beautifully cut, and very interesting way that the fabric had been made to give it the impact, the careful matching of the checks. And it was very common practice for women getting married to wear their utility suit for their wedding, and the men would wear their uniforms. My mother got married in her suit and my father wore his RAF uniform. So people did everything that they could to look as special as they can and look after their clothing very, very carefully. So I think that covers everything that I want to say about utility clothing from our collection here. But if you have anything at home with that CC41 label on, it did include bed linen, it included, actually there was utility furniture as well, but if you have anything at all, do let us know, because it's testament to how well made things were, that they're still there and they're lasting. Anyway, we'd love to hear from you if you've got anything for us, and thank you for listening.